I still remember that shocking moment as if it were yesterday, the moment when I discovered that the very money I had painstakingly saved was being used to buy a house, and it wasn't for our family's dream home, but for a secret purchase made by my wife. Her betrayal cut deeper than any knife, and in that instant, my heart pounded with disbelief and fury. I felt as if the foundation of our entire life together had crumbled beneath me. In that moment of searing realization, I resolved that I would reclaim control of my own future, even if it meant putting up that very house for sale without ever telling her. I had always believed that trust was the cornerstone of any partnership. For years, I had dedicated myself to our shared dreams, meticulously saving every spare dollar for the future we promised to build together. I envisioned a home that would serve as a sanctuary for our family, a testament to our hard work and mutual love. But the discovery that my wife had used my money meant for our joint aspirations, to purchase a house in secret shattered that vision. The betrayal was not just financial, it was deeply personal. I felt deceived, humiliated, and utterly alone in a way I had never experienced before. The revelation came on a seemingly ordinary evening. I had been reviewing our bank statements at home, a routine task that I'd always done with a sense of responsibility and hope for the future. As I scanned through the transactions, one entry caught my eye, a large withdrawal I couldn't account for. My hands trembled as I dug deeper, tracing the funds to a property transaction. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. My wife had purchased a house without my knowledge or consent. Every thought, every emotion was a mix of shock, anger, and profound sadness. I felt as if I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, only to have it shattered by the harsh light of truth. In the days that followed, my mind became a whirlwind of emotions. I replayed every conversation, every moment of silence that now took on a sinister meaning. Had I missed the signs? The casual remarks, the evasive answers when I asked about our savings, all now seemed like deliberate omissions meant to conceal her secret. The hurt was compounded by the fact that our relationship had always been built on what I thought was mutual trust and understanding. Instead, I was left questioning not only her intentions but also my own judgment and self-worth. At first, I wrestled with the urge to confront her immediately. I imagined a heated exchange, where I would demand answers and force her to face the reality of her deception. But as I mulled over the situation, a more calculated resolve began to form. I realized that an impulsive confrontation might only lead to further chaos and emotional pain, blinding me to the clear path I needed to take. Instead, I decided to reclaim my financial independence and in doing so, send a clear message: I would not allow this betrayal to define my future. I began by quietly gathering all the relevant documents, bank statements, transaction records, and property papers. Every piece of evidence confirmed the unvarnished truth: she had used our joint funds to buy a house without my knowledge. I felt a mixture of sorrow and determination as I compiled the information. I couldn't believe that the person I had once trusted implicitly had made such a unilateral decision, one that would irrevocably alter the course of our lives. With the evidence laid out before me, I started to consider my options. The idea of reporting the transaction to the authorities crossed my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. This wasn't about legal retribution, it was about taking back control of my life and my finances. I resolved to put the house up for sale. By doing so, I would not only reclaim the money that had been siphoned away but also symbolically dismantle the false foundation upon which our marriage had begun to crumble. I spent countless hours researching the real estate market, consulting with trusted financial advisors, and exploring the logistics of selling the property. Each conversation and every piece of advice reinforced my conviction that the best way to move forward was to sever the financial ties that had been imposed on me without my consent. I wasn't doing this out of revenge alone. I was doing it for my own future, for the opportunity to rebuild a life free from deception and emotional manipulation. In the midst of this internal and external battle, I found myself increasingly isolated. The betrayal had left me questioning the very nature of our relationship, and I began to notice subtle changes in my wife's behavior. She became evasive when I brought up financial matters and would quickly change the subject if I mentioned the house. The distance between us widened with each passing day, and I realized that what had once been a shared dream was now nothing more than a solitary burden I was forced to carry. I felt the weight of her secret purchase like an anchor, pulling me down into a sea of doubt and mistrust. Yet, amid the darkness, a sliver of hope emerged. I began to see that this painful episode was, in fact, an opportunity, a chance to rebuild my identity on my own terms. I reconnected with old friends who had always believed in me, those who reminded me of the man I had been before the betrayal. Their unwavering support became a lifeline, a source of comfort in a time when I felt utterly abandoned. I started to invest more in myself, taking courses to expand my financial knowledge and even exploring new business opportunities that had long been dormant ideas. Each small step became a deliberate act of self-empowerment, a way to reclaim the dignity that had been stripped away in that fateful moment. In the solitude of my evenings, as I sat at my desk surrounded by the soft glow of a lamp, I began to chronicle my thoughts and emotions. I poured my heart out in a journal, capturing every raw moment of pain, every burst of anger, and every glimmer of hope that began to shine through the darkness. My writing became a testament to my journey, a record of my evolution from a man devastated by betrayal to someone who was steadily reclaiming his life. With each entry, I found that my hurt was slowly transforming into a quiet strength, a resolve that whispered that I was more than the sum of my past mistakes. The process was far from linear. There were days when the pain would surge unexpectedly, a comment from a coworker, a familiar song on the radio, or even a fleeting image of our happier times, threatening to pull me back into the abyss of regret. But in those moments I would take a deep breath, revisit the affirmations I had written in my journal, and remind myself that each setback was merely a stepping stone toward a future that I had the power to shape. I learned that forgiveness, though difficult, was essential not for the sake of the person who had wronged me, but for my own peace of mind. I began to forgive her, not to absolve her actions, but to liberate myself from the chains of bitterness that had once held me captive. Through this process of introspection and reinvention, I gradually started to see a shift in my perspective. I realized that the house, bought secretly with my hard-earned money, had become a symbol of our broken trust, and by putting it up for sale, I was reclaiming not just my financial stability, but also my autonomy. I began to plan for the sale with meticulous care, consulting with real estate experts, assessing market values, and even negotiating quietly with potential buyers. Every step I took was a declaration of independence, a way of saying that I would no longer be defined by someone else's reckless choices. In the midst of these preparations, my emotions remained a turbulent mix. I felt a twinge of sorrow for what we had lost, a shared dream that had once been the foundation of our life together. But that sorrow was gradually eclipsed by a growing sense of empowerment. I began to understand that my value was not tied to a failed relationship or to the money that had been misappropriated. It was inherent, unchangeable, and deeply rooted in the person I was becoming. Every new contract signed, every successful appraisal, and every encouraging word from an advisor strengthened the resolve that I was finally taking control of my destiny. As the days turned into weeks, I found solace in the gradual transformation of my life. My evenings were no longer filled with endless worry and self-doubt. Instead, I began to look forward to the future with cautious optimism. I reconnected with interests that had once brought me joy, reading, hiking, and even exploring new culinary adventures. These small acts of self-care, combined with the strides I was making in my professional life, began to stitch together a tapestry of hope and resilience that was uniquely mine. I also reached out to a few trusted friends, sharing with them the difficult decision I had made. Their reactions were a blend of surprise and admiration. Many of them confessed that they had always believed in my potential, even when I had doubted it myself. Their words were a soothing balm, a reminder that I was not alone in my journey. I started to host small gatherings at my place, where I shared my experiences openly and encouraged others to find strength in their own setbacks. Those nights, filled with honest conversation and heartfelt laughter, became a sanctuary where the wounds of the past began to heal. One evening, as I sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe reviewing the latest details of the house sale, I overheard a conversation between two strangers discussing the importance of financial independence and personal empowerment. Their words resonated with me, sparking an epiphany. Every hardship, every act of betrayal, was an opportunity to redefine my future. I began to see that the misappropriated funds weren't a loss. They were the catalyst for a journey that had already transformed me into a stronger, more self-reliant person. The house, a symbol of that betrayal, was now a tool for my liberation, a means of reclaiming the power that had once been taken from me. I dove deeper into my financial studies, attending workshops and even enrolling in online courses to master the art of investment and wealth management. I learned how to turn adversity into opportunity by diversifying my assets and planning meticulously for the future. With each new lesson, my confidence grew, and I started to see that the money I had lost was not a measure of my worth but a stepping stone to a much larger financial empire that I could build on my own terms. In the midst of this busy, transformative period, I also made time for introspection. Every night before bed, I would sit with my journal, writing down the lessons learned, the obstacles overcome, and the dreams that were now within reach. I reflected on the irony of my situation. My wife, who had once taken for granted the commitment and hard work I poured into our shared dreams, was now a distant figure in my life, her choices leaving me with the freedom to rebuild and redefine my identity. Each written word became a declaration that I was more than what she had dismissed. I was a man of substance, resilience, and endless potential. By the time I had fully committed to the process of selling the house, the transformation in both my professional and personal life was undeniable. The sale was moving forward smoothly, and every step in that process felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been lost. My newly discovered financial independence was not only rebuilding my bank account but also bolstering my self-esteem. I was no longer the man who allowed someone else's betrayal to dictate his destiny. I had taken control, and with each passing day, I built a future defined by my own values and ambitions. Throughout this long, arduous period, I began to see that my journey was evolving into something far greater than a simple act of financial retribution. It was becoming a complete personal renaissance, a metamorphosis that would reshape every aspect of my life. I had taken the painful sting of betrayal and turned it into a catalyst for self-improvement, for the pursuit of knowledge, for the courage to rebuild what had been lost. Every small victory in the boardroom, every step taken on the running trail, every note written in my journal, was a quiet rebellion against the past, a defiant act that proclaimed my belief in my own worth. As I continued to forge this new path, I began to envision a future where the scars of betrayal would serve not as reminders of weakness but as emblems of strength. I started planning for bigger ventures, exploring opportunities that would allow me to invest my reclaimed wealth into projects that resonated with my renewed vision of life. I connected with like-minded individuals, mentors, and fellow entrepreneurs who shared my passion for innovation and personal growth. Their support and camaraderie fueled my drive, and I began to see that my life was steadily transforming into a tapestry of resilience, hope, and endless possibility. This relentless pursuit of self-rediscovery and financial independence had a profound effect on my perspective. I came to understand that my worth was never contingent on the opinions or actions of others. The money that had been stolen, the house that had been bought in secret, and the betrayal that had once threatened to shatter me had all become catalysts for an extraordinary journey, a journey where I learned that I was capable of rising above even the deepest wounds. I learned that true empowerment comes not from external validation, but from the courage to reclaim your life and build a future on your own terms. And so, with each passing day, I moved closer to the culmination of this transformative chapter. The project of selling the house was nearing completion, and with it came a tangible sense of closure, a final severance from the past that had once held me captive. I realized that by letting go, I was not only freeing myself from the shadow of betrayal but also making room for a future filled with possibilities that were entirely my own. I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation, a release from the chains of resentment that had once bound me, and the birth of a new, vibrant identity that was built on strength, perseverance, and an unyielding belief in my own potential. In the days and weeks following that fateful dinner, I was consumed by a single-minded drive to reclaim not only my stolen idea, but my identity as an innovator. Every morning, I awoke with the memory of her scorn echoing in my mind. It was as if her mocking laughter had become a siren call, urging me to prove that what she had dismissed as foolish was in fact the seed of something transformative. I began my days early, before the first light crept through my window, to run through the silent, empty streets. Each pounding step on the pavement was a reminder that I was moving forward, that I was determined to leave behind the shadow of her betrayal. I ran until my lungs burned and my thoughts cleared, and with every mile, I promised myself that I would build something real out of the ideas that she had so callously stolen. At home, my office, once cluttered with half-finished plans and discarded sketches, became a sanctuary of focus. I sifted through old notebooks, rereading the early drafts of my business concept with fresh eyes. I began to see details that I had overlooked before, connections that hinted at untapped potential. The hurt was still raw, but it was gradually replaced by a fierce determination. I started to redesign the concept from the ground up, refining every detail with a newfound clarity. Every late night spent in front of my computer, every scribbled note on a napkin, felt like a small rebellion against the past. I realized that if she had been willing to dismiss my dreams without a second thought, then I would make it my mission to ensure that those very dreams shone all the brighter in the light of success. I reached out to a few trusted colleagues and former mentors, people who had always seen something promising in my ideas, and began forming a core team. We met in small, nondescript cafes and quiet co-working spaces, poring over market analyses and brainstorming innovative solutions to problems we had identified. These sessions were intense and raw, filled with both creative sparks and moments of frustration. We debated fiercely, challenged each other's assumptions, and slowly began to assemble a business plan that was not only viable but had the potential to disrupt the market. Every discussion, every breakthrough fueled my determination to prove that my idea was worth far more than the mockery it had once received. My team and I invested in research and development, seeking out the latest trends and technologies to ensure that our concept was cutting edge. I spent hours analyzing industry reports, watching webinars, and even attending conferences under the guise of networking, all the while gathering the insights necessary to refine our product. I quickly learned that the business world was ruthless, but it also rewarded perseverance and innovation. The more I delved into the technical details and strategic planning, the more confident I became. I no longer saw the initial betrayal as a wound to be mourned. Instead, it had become the catalyst for a transformation that was as exhilarating as it was painful. One of the most challenging parts of this journey was dealing with the emotional fallout. There were nights when the memory of that dinner, the way she had laughed, the sneers of her family, the disbelief in my own eyes, would come rushing back with overwhelming force. In those moments I felt a mix of anger, sorrow, and a strange liberation. I started attending therapy sessions to help process the torrent of emotions. My therapist encouraged me to view the betrayal as an impetus for growth, to see every harsh word as an opportunity to redefine my own self-worth. Through these sessions, I learned that forgiveness was not about condoning her actions, but about freeing myself from the constant shadow of resentment. Gradually, I began to let go of the bitterness, replacing it with a steady resolve to move forward. I discovered that healing was not a linear path, but a winding road marked by setbacks and triumphs alike. In the midst of rebuilding my business, I also began to rebuild my personal life. I reconnected with old friends, people who remembered me before the hurt and who welcomed me back with open arms. Their support was a constant reminder that I was not alone, that there were those who valued me for who I was rather than for what I could provide. I also found solace in solitary moments of self-reflection. Long, quiet walks through city parks became a ritual, a time when I could think deeply about my journey and chart the path forward. I realized that while the betrayal had stripped away one version of my future, it had also cleared the way for a new one defined by resilience, independence, and the courage to pursue my dreams without compromise. Each step of this process was both a physical and emotional rebirth. I began to invest not only in my business but in myself. I enrolled in courses on leadership and innovation, devouring books and podcasts that broadened my perspective on success. I learned new strategies for managing finances and even took up hobbies that nurtured my creative side, like sketching and playing the piano. These endeavors filled the void left by the loss and helped me rediscover passions that I had once set aside. Slowly, I began to see the world in a different light, a world full of possibilities unbounded by the narrow judgments of the past. I remember one particularly pivotal day when I was invited to a local startup networking event. The room buzzed with the energy of like-minded entrepreneurs, and as I mingled with people who were passionate about innovation, I felt an invigorating sense of belonging. Conversations flowed naturally and I shared snippets of my journey, the pain, the struggle, and the slow, steady climb toward rebuilding. I found that many in the room had experienced similar betrayals and setbacks. Their stories resonated with mine, and in that moment, I realized that my experience was not an isolated incident but part of a larger tapestry of resilience. The connections I made that day reinforced my belief that, despite everything, my ideas, and my worth, were valid and valued. As my business plan solidified and my team grew more confident in our vision, I began to reach out to potential investors. I spent hours preparing pitch decks and rehearsing my presentation, determined to convey not just the financial potential of our product, but the passion and the hard work behind it. The process was grueling. Each pitch was a test of both my knowledge and my emotional resolve. I encountered skepticism and, at times, outright hostility from those who doubted my ability to succeed after such a public humiliation. Yet, with every rejection, I honed my approach and grew more steadfast in my belief. Slowly, I secured a meeting with a promising investor whose interest in our concept began to turn the tide. The meeting was intense, filled with tough questions and critical feedback, but it ended with a handshake and a commitment that gave me hope that my efforts were paying off. Throughout this period, I kept a detailed record of my progress in a journal that became a vital source of reflection. I wrote about the long, painful nights when the memories threatened to overwhelm me, and about the quiet triumphs that followed each small victory. I documented every lesson learned from failures and every moment of clarity that propelled me forward. In those pages, I found a narrative of resilience that began to redefine my identity, not as someone broken by betrayal, but as someone who had turned the darkest of experiences into the foundation for an inspiring comeback. Gradually, the business began to take shape, and with it, so did a renewed sense of purpose. I was no longer defined by the humiliation of that family dinner or by the betrayal of my wife's theft of my idea. I had channeled the pain into creativity and determination, and every step forward was a testament to the fact that I could, indeed, create something extraordinary out of the ashes of rejection. The company I was building was more than just a financial venture. It was the embodiment of a journey from despair to empowerment. Each milestone reached by my team, each new investment secured, was a quiet victory over the shadows of the past. By the end of this arduous phase, as I looked around at the progress we had made, a business model refined, a dedicated team in place, and a growing pipeline of investors, I realized that I had not only reclaimed my idea but had elevated it to heights I had once only dreamed of. The mockery that had once cut so deeply had become the fuel for a fire that now blazed with the promise of a future defined by innovation and self-belief. I remember the day everything shifted, when the weight of every sneer, every dismissive laugh, finally transformed into a steady, unwavering resolve. It was a chilly winter morning, and as I sipped my coffee by the window, I realized that I had reached a point of no return. The stolen idea, once the subject of my deepest pain, had blossomed into a thriving enterprise. Every setback and every sting of betrayal had fueled my transformation. I was no longer the man who was mocked, belittled, or reduced to a single insult. Instead, I had become the embodiment of resilience, a living testament that success can rise, brilliantly and defiantly, out of even the most crushing betrayals. In the wake of the betrayal, I had embarked on a journey of relentless self-reinvention. I poured every ounce of my energy into refining my business concept, meticulously reviewing every sketch and plan I'd ever jotted down. I spent sleepless nights reimagining strategies and harnessing every lesson learned from the moment my wife stole my idea. That act of betrayal, which once left me feeling devastated and exposed, became the catalyst for a fire within me, a fire that drove me to innovate, to excel, and to reclaim my identity. I recall how every rejection, every sarcastic remark from critics, only sharpened my focus. With the support of a loyal team I assembled from scratch, friends, colleagues, and mentors who believed in my vision, I began to see that the idea wasn't mine to lose, it was mine to nurture and to elevate to heights that even I had once only dared to dream. The transformation of my business was not instantaneous. There were countless challenges along the way, technical glitches, funding shortfalls, and moments when the market's harsh realities threatened to derail our progress. I vividly remember the agonizing days when prototype after prototype failed to meet our standards, and I would sit in a quiet conference room alone, feeling the sting of every setback. But every time I confronted these obstacles, I was reminded of that humiliating moment at the dinner, when my wife's mockery had echoed in every corner of my mind, and I channeled that hurt into a fierce determination to succeed. Slowly our product evolved. Our breakthrough came when we integrated a novel technology that not only solved our long-standing issues but also set us apart from competitors. The investor meetings that followed were challenging, yet each presentation became a stepping stone to building credibility and trust in our vision. Every nod of approval, every handshake after a successful pitch, served as a resounding answer to those who had once doubted me. As our business began to grow, I found that my personal life was also undergoing a profound metamorphosis. I began to rediscover passions I had set aside when I was so consumed by the pain of betrayal. I returned to long-forgotten hobbies like painting and writing poetry, each brushstroke and verse a testament to the beauty that can arise from adversity. I took up running again, letting the rhythm of my footsteps on the pavement remind me that every step forward was a step away from the hurt. In those solitary runs, I learned to embrace the quiet moments of reflection and to find solace in the strength of my own company. The more I immersed myself in my work and in self-discovery, the more I realized that my value was not defined by the opinions or actions of others. I was no longer the man who needed validation from a partner who could not see my worth. I had grown into someone who understood that true success is built from the ground up, with hard work, perseverance, and an unyielding belief in one's own potential. I became active in networking events and entrepreneurial forums, sharing my story with others who had faced similar betrayals. The support and admiration I received from these communities not only boosted my confidence but also reaffirmed that my journey was part of a much larger narrative of resilience and triumph. I heard countless stories from people who had been hurt by similar betrayals, and their voices, united in determination, inspired me to mentor them. I learned that sharing our struggles can forge bonds stronger than any accolade, and that by lifting others, we continue to rise ourselves. There were still moments when I would catch a glimpse of my past, like when I saw a social media post hinting at the lavish lifestyle my wife had once pursued with the stolen idea. But rather than feeling the old sting, I now viewed those memories with detached clarity. I understood that her choices, however misguided, had inadvertently given me the opportunity to chart a new course. The pain had been a teacher and I had listened well. I recalled the long nights spent pouring my heart into my journal. Every tear, every angry word, every moment of despair eventually transformed into reflections on resilience and self-worth. Those entries were raw, unfiltered, and they became a cherished record of my metamorphosis. By the time our business hit its stride, the once embittered tone of my inner monologue had given way to quiet assurance. My portfolio had grown robust, and I received invitations to speak at prestigious conferences, each appearance a chance to share my story of overcoming betrayal with grace and strength. I realized that every small victory in the boardroom was not just a business milestone, but a personal triumph over the doubts and insecurities that had once plagued me. My success was not about proving my detractors wrong, but about proving to myself that I was capable of building something remarkable from the depths of despair. In one particularly defining moment, I was invited to a high-profile industry event where I delivered a keynote address about resilience and the power of innovation. As I stood before a packed audience, I spoke about the pain of betrayal, the long journey of rebuilding my idea, and the transformation that came from embracing one's own worth. I ended my talk with a quiet, heartfelt message. Your worth isn't defined by the opinions of others, but by your ability to rise above adversity and create your own destiny. The applause that followed was thunderous, and in that moment, I knew that I had finally found my voice. I was no longer a victim of scorn. I was a leader, an innovator, and a living testament to the power of perseverance. As months turned into years, I continued to expand my business and invest in new opportunities that resonated with the lessons I had learned. I diversified our product offerings, entered untapped markets, and even started a scholarship fund for aspiring entrepreneurs who came from humble beginnings. Every new venture was a step further away from the bitter past and a leap toward a future that I controlled. I became more confident in my decisions, more assertive in my vision, and more at peace with who I was. The journey had taught me that success is not a destination but a continuous process of growth, reinvention, and self-discovery. I also found that my personal relationships had deepened in ways I hadn't expected. I cultivated a circle of friends who celebrated my victories and offered support during setbacks. I reconnected with family members who had always believed in me, and I built new connections with people who shared my values and ambitions. Through it all, I learned that love and friendship are not measured by grand gestures or perfect circumstances, but by the genuine bonds formed through shared experiences and mutual respect. I began to see that my happiness was not contingent on a single relationship, but on a network of supportive, caring individuals who lifted me up and helped me keep moving forward. There were still moments of reflection, quiet evenings when I would sit by the window of my office, watching the city lights flicker like a constellation of possibilities. In those moments, I'd think back to the day my wife mocked my ideas and the deep pain that had once threatened to consume me. But now, I saw that pain for what it was, a necessary catalyst that had propelled me to build a future I never thought possible. I realized that every betrayal, every dismissive comment, had helped forge the strength and determination that now defined me. I understood that the journey from despair to triumph was marked by not just success, but by the ability to learn, to adapt, and to ultimately find joy in the very process of overcoming adversity. Now, as I stand at the threshold of an even brighter future, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I am grateful for every setback that forced me to dig deep and discover my inner strength. I am thankful for the challenges that taught me resilience and for the small victories that confirmed my belief in my own worth. My business is flourishing, my relationships are enriched by authenticity, and my heart is finally free from the lingering shadows of betrayal. I know that the scars of the past will always be a part of me, but they no longer define my future. They have become the roadmap of my journey, the evidence of my growth, and the promise of endless possibilities. This is my story, a journey from betrayal to empowerment, from heartbreak to unstoppable resilience. I have learned that true success is not measured by the opinions of others, but by the courage to pursue your dreams, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. Every step I have taken has led me to a life filled with purpose, passion, and the unshakable belief that I am more than enough. As I continue to write the chapters of my life, I do so with the quiet confidence that every ending is simply the beginning of something extraordinary, a future that is mine to create, a destiny defined by my own strength and perseverance.